On the drive side of this, what I've done is taken some machine bearings, embedded them in this housing so they're just proud of the outside a little bit, and then ran a 3/8 bolt through. These are not the right size bearings, I'm just using those as a demo because I don't want to pull these out. And then I took a 3/8 bolt, cut the end of it off, put a T-nut on the end of it, and reversed the tangs. I bent the tangs over, and then I drilled a hole through, tapped it out, and put a threaded bolt in there to hold that in place. And that creates the drive side of it. And you don't really have to have the tangs, as long as when you thread the stock all the way down to this, that stops it from going any further. And if you're in the forward, if you're driving in the forward position, it won't, it doesn't want to back out, and it'll keep everything held in nice and tight in place. Now on the opposite side, all I've done is taken a stop collar, and then I've clamped this whole assembly onto the bearings and drilled out all the way through this rod and put a tap in. So that holds that in stock, so it's nice and tight. Now on this side, on the drive side, you don't, because I'm only using a 3/8 rod, I don't want it hanging way out here, because if I'm off axis or if my piece isn't balanced very well, it can cause this to bend. So a better situation would be to use like a grade 8 3/8 rod or 3/8 bolt, and that's probably what I'll do in the final build. And when I do the build that'll go with the plans, I'll show all the details on how I accomplished all of this. So now what I need to do is think about mounting the drill, and what I've got is a plate that it's going to sit right here. It'll be screwed in from here, underneath, and from the front, so it'll have a nice secure hold. And then I cut this assembly out, or this piece out, and that'll mount right here. The drill will go in here. Probably the number one most important part of this build, and it is also the least obvious, is the way that the blade attacks the material. If our pin is right here and our stock is out here and our rotation is this direction, we want the side of the blade to be center with the pin. So whatever side opposite the rotation, you want that side to be centered of the pin. So as the material is moving into the blade, it's being cut away before it gets to top center. And that'll leave you with the best finish. It'll also remove most of the vibration from the process, and it really helps with the cutting. You get a much better cut, a much less aggressive cut when the blade is in that position. In the last video I did about this system, I showed how to cut tenons on the end of a natural log. And that's what I originally designed this system for many years ago, was to be able to make tenons for rustic furniture that I built. And the advantage of doing it this way is I don't have to go out and buy a bunch of different size tenoners or cutters, which can be really expensive. Even the cheap ones start around 125 bucks. This way I can just adjust the height of my skill saw, and that makes the size tenon I need. Now there's a couple of things that are unique about this. When you buy a tenon cutter, you're stuck to the diameter that tenon cuts, and you're also stuck to the profile that it also cuts. Now there are 45-degree profiles, there are ones that have rounded profiles, and if you want a different style or a different profile, you have to go out and buy a different cutter. With the way this system is set up, if you attack it like straight on, you're going to get the same profile that's on the saw blade that you're using. But one of the cool things about this system is you can actually move the saw at an angle or a pitch to the piece that you're cutting. And by doing so, you actually change the bevel on the cut. So if you're going this way, it's a full straight cut, and the further you move it in relationship to the piece that you're cutting, you get a much steeper bevel. Now when I put the build video and the how to use video together to go with the plans, I'll cover all of this. There'll be a lot of information in those videos and a lot of tips and tricks how to make this thing really perform for you. But today what I wanted to show is it's a simple application where you can also make large dowels and do some other fun stuff. Now, I know there's a few people out there that have mentioned that the skill saw kind of makes them nervous, and to be honest with you, I completely understand that. But what you have to understand is that there's actually less aggression with a skill saw than there is using a router on this thing. It's much more aggressive to use a router. It takes a lot longer to use a router because you have to go in very small passes with a router. You can't just hog out a bunch of material like you can with a skill saw. So what I'm going to do is demonstrate this on some square stock today with a skill saw, and then I'm going to set up a router system, which is absolutely a feasible way to do it, and then we're going to do some cuts with the router system. As you can see, that cuts really well. Now with a little tiny bit of sanding, that's going to be ready for finish. It doesn't take a whole lot, just a light sanding on that and it's ready for finish. So that makes a great way to cut tenons. Now if you wanted a shoulder tenon on a piece, just by using the router and making small passes into it, you could create a nice shoulder tenon as well. So let me throw a router together and set that up to work on this, and I'll show you what it looks like using a router to make some cuts. So what you'll probably have noticed is my first two passes were relatively quick. The third pass I started slowing down. And the reason for that is now that I'm getting lower into the piece, I'm removing more stock. So the more and more stock I remove at a time, the slower I want my feed rate to be. Let's keep going. I chose to use plywood for this demonstration because there's different grain directions in the wood. Now this is the part where we cut with the skill saw, and there's the router. Skill saw, router. That kind of shows you some differences between using the skill saw to cut tenons or make dowels as opposed to the router. Now it doesn't take much, stretch of the imagination to see this being used as a makeshift lathe or homemade lathe either. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for today. And I've got some more things that we'll be doing with this. And if you've been watching my drill powered tool series that I've been posting lately, this is one of the devices I want to include in my multi-tool machine. Now, it won't be as large, but it will definitely be as functional. Now, the next video I post on this machine, we're going to talk about some other really cool things that it can do, including spirals, hollow spirals, and how you can do some basic profiles with this same setup. So I'll have that available in the next week or so, and I'm hoping to have the plans done. I have started them, and we'll see how it goes. There's a lot that goes into putting a set of plans together for a machine like this. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, I would invite you to subscribe to my channel. We do all kinds of fun woodworking and crazy jigs, and it's always a lot of fun. So we'll be talking to you soon.